What can one of the richest men in the world teach us about acquiring the best asset and never selling? What can the founding fathers of America teach us about why we shouldn't trust governments printing money in central banks? Why does Bitcoin represent life, liberty, and the pursuit of property rights for billions of people around the world? Let's find out. Welcome to Bitcoin Daily. I'm Dante Cook, head of Swan Business. In case study example 9,568 of do whatever you can to buy the best asset and never sell it, Steve Ballmer actually has a higher net worth than Bill Gates. When Ballmer joined Microsoft in 1980, he was employee number 30 and also had zero equity. His trick, he knew that he had a skill set that nobody else at Microsoft had. He was the first non-technical hire at Microsoft, and he knew how to leverage this position. So he structured his first contract so that he made 10% of profits from his contracts that he sold. And this was pretty lucrative for him, as Microsoft grew from just $16,000 in sales in 1976 to $8 million in sales in 1980. That's less than a Bitcoin cycle to grow that fast. And with that being an unsustainable salary package for him, they proposed that they give him equity. By 1986, when Microsoft IPO'd, he owned 8% of the company. And today, he still owns 4% of Microsoft. And Bill Gates owns just 1%. You see, instead of diversifying, or in Bitcoin, as we say, diversifying, Ballmer stuck to his guns and never sold the best asset that he had. Microsoft stock still makes up more than 90% of his net worth, even today, with him owning an organization like the Clippers. Ballmer had diamond hands, which gives me hope onto the why buy more Bitcoin strategy and never sell it. Because today, Bitcoin is still the best asset with the brightest future moving forward. Let me give you a few reasons why. But before I go into that, one thing that you'll notice is that he owned 8% at the IPO, and today he owns 4%. Well, that's because stocks can be diluted, unlike Bitcoin. But let me get into my rant. You know why I buy Bitcoin? Because I like to keep things simple. For me, it's the best opportunity that provides the greatest risk-adjusted returns. I'm not that smart, and I'm not like government officials like Mrs. Pelosi, who know when to illegally time or buy into stocks and corporations. As Nancy Pelosi this year is up 39%, or $23 million, or 123 times her salary as a government public official. And it's really hard for me to be a stock picker right now. It's hard for me to forecast a company's forward earnings. When you look at proposals like these from the Biden-Harris administration that say that they're going to hire 31 lawyers to work with states on price gouging, or they're going to be calling on retailers like Walmart, Aldi, and Target to limit their pricing or implement price controls. Every time that I've seen a price control scheme implemented anywhere in the world, anytime in the past, it hasn't really gone that well. And when you see things like their third bullet saying that they're going to provide $2,000 more in income to low-income families for SNAP benefits or EBT benefits, I'm not against those. But my question is, where's the money coming from? Oh yeah, it'll be printed out of thin air. It's hard for me to invest in the economy when you look at things like the job openings number crashing and falling as hard as the dot-com bubble, the great financial crisis, and even the pandemic. Clearly, employers are less confident. But let's look at some more numbers and some more data. Let's look at this chart of all of the major indexes and look at how things are going or not growing. Services are now contracting. Business activity is contracting. New orders for manufacturing, contracting. Employment, contracting faster than its trend over the last 5 months. Prices, increasing. Inventories, shrinking. Backlogs of orders, contracting. Imports, contracting. Things don't look that rosy out there. It's statistically unlikely for all of these indexes to be pointing down towards slower growth or contraction all at the same time. So if things like stocks, in an example like Steve Ballmer, are going to dilute me over time, or I can't actually be a good stock picker, and I don't have a lot of confidence in the economy, especially when interest rates are at the levels that they are, well, what can I look forward to? The answer, especially if you're watching this show, newsflash, is Bitcoin. It's the best risk-adjusted asset class that will provide great returns, but more importantly, it'll provide freedom and self-sovereignty. Case study 9,1053 on why you should self-custody your assets. MMA fighter Khabib had his assets seized by the Russian government. Allegedly, he owes $3.3 million to them. I'm not advocating for not paying your taxes, but when you see a headline like this, it's easy to think of what would happen if the bank said that I owed something or that they could just easily confiscate or seize all of my assets with just a push of a button. In the digital era, we need digital costliness in order to provide protection of basic rights of individuals. And heading into the 4th of July, this also made me think of Bitcoin again, as July 4th marks the day of independence in America, one of the greatest revolutions that this world has ever seen. A revolution of 13 small colonies in an uninhabited country that wanted to deminimize or shrink the size of centralized government, in this case, England, from trying to control them from across the sea through monetary controls and taxes. Listen to some quotes from the founding fathers. This might give you a hint as to why we believe that they would be Bitcoiners if they were still around and alive today. The first president of the United States, George Washington, had this to say: "Paper money has had the effect in your state that it will ever have, to ruin commerce, oppress the honest, and open the door to every species of fraud and injustice." Let's go to TJ, Thomas Jefferson, who had this to say: "I believe that banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. Already, they have raised up a moneyed aristocracy that has set the government at defiance. The issuing power of money should be taken away from the banks and restored to the people to whom it properly belongs." And sip one for Sammy Adams, who says this: "Now what liberty can there be where property is taken without any consent?" And Alexander Hamilton had this to say: "To emit an unfunded paper as the sign of value ought not to continue a formal part of the Constitution, nor ever hereafter to be employed, being in its nature pregnant with abuses and liable to be made the engine of imposition and fraud, holding out temptations equally pernicious to the integrity of government and to the morals of the people." Clearly, the founding fathers and the early creators of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights and the people that fought for the independence of America away from Britain had pretty high suspicions against centralized government and central banks and the ability to print money out of thin air. What do you think that they would say about our current government, who's able to print money without accountability? Since 1971, when President Nixon banned convertibility of the dollar into gold or other assets, removing the gold standard and gold as a reserve currency around the world, has unleashed more wars, more fraud, and more corruption than any other time in the history of the world. The impacts have been devastating. So as you celebrate July 4th, think back to the Boston Tea Party, which started as a tax on tea issue, and think about why Bitcoin is a global protocol that represents life, liberty, property rights, and the pursuit of happiness for billions of people around the world. The Bitcoin white paper and Bitcoin code represents a bill of rights in a digital 21st century that we find ourselves in today. For many around the world, Bitcoin represents a tool that will lift them out of their current situation of fiat debasement and inflation that is crippling them. But it also offers them freedom. It's a freedom revolution, and a non-violent revolution at that. A revolution that Martin Luther King Jr. probably would have gotten behind. On July 4th, we celebrate a mini independence from England in America. But soon, and with enough sats, I think we're going to be celebrating a much larger independence. Independence from fiat currency and corruption for billions of people across the globe. If you want to read some great tweet threads on Bitcoin being a tool for freedom and independence and why the founding fathers of America probably would have been Bitcoiners, not probably, they would have, then look at some of the links in the show notes below. These are some great threads, and I really appreciated reading them. And before I forget, there obviously won't be an episode tomorrow as many people are celebrating a holiday. Go celebrate independence. Go think about your freedom. Go enjoy time with family and friends and loved ones. Have a great 4th of July. This is Dante Cook with Swan.com. Happy stacking.